Most people imagine darkness as an inconvenience, an obstacle softened by flashlights, street lamps, the glow of civilization. They think the danger begins only when something moves in the dark. But that belief is a relic of a world that no longer exists. After the collapse, the moment the lights die, the threat is already in motion. The first enemy you encounter isn't a creature, a marauder, or a trap. It's the false confidence carried over from the old world, the belief that I'll figure it out, it's just dark. Hard logic dismantles that illusion instantly. Total blackout is not passive. It actively reshapes how your brain interprets space, sound, and time. Your depth perception collapses. Your hearing overcompensates. Your threat detection instincts fire without context. And in that confusion, the smallest error cascades into irreversible consequences. The hook is simple, but brutal. You will not realize you're already in danger until the moment you try to use light and fail. Maybe because your battery is dead. Maybe because your flame won't hold. Maybe because the light you ignite exposes your position to someone who has been listening to you stumble for the last 20 seconds. In the old world, a dead flashlight was an inconvenience. In the post-collapse world, it is a death sentence delivered in slow motion. This is why the collapse forces a new uncompromising philosophy. Light is no longer a tool. It is a form of power, and power that is mismanaged becomes a liability. Every illumination choice becomes a tactical decision with consequences that unfold in silence. When you finally understand that, you realize the truth that drives everything in the parts ahead. Survival is not about having light. It's about controlling light. And only 6 lighting tools remain stable enough, durable enough, and tactically sound enough to keep you alive when the world becomes a void. In the new world, illumination is governed by a single uncompromising doctrine. You never create more light than the situation demands, and you never reveal more than you control. Most survivors make the same fatal mistake in the first weeks after the collapse, believing that brighter means safer. That logic comes from the old world, where illumination had no cost and darkness had no intent. But in post-collapse conditions, every photon you release becomes information, direction, distance, movement, rhythm, stress level. To predators, human or feral, that information is as valuable as blood on the ground. Hard logic enforces this rule with precision, stripping away guesswork and forcing you into photon discipline. Light must be narrow, intentional, and strictly rationed. A wide beam reveals your silhouette. A long burn reveals your position. A careless flicker announces your instability. You are not illuminating the environment, you are broadcasting your existence. This is why the philosophy shifts. Illumination is not about seeing. It's about shaping what sees you. Biology sharpens the threat. When deprived of light, the human brain overcompensates, amplifying fear responses, distorting distance, and misreading threat patterns. Darkness doesn't simply hide dangers. It creates illusions that push you into poor tactical decisions. And this is where controlled, disciplined lighting becomes the anchor of psychological stability. A directed beam resets spatial awareness. A timed pulse overrides panic. A concealed glow supports navigational logic without exposing your body profile. Light is not emotional comfort. It is neurological correction. Operationally, the principle becomes absolute. Visibility must exist without exposure. You use the smallest beam necessary, angled low, controlled by breath, movement, and intention. You never blast the darkness. You carve into it. You avoid the impulse to sweep left and right. You guide the beam like a surgeon making incisions into uncertainty. Precision replaces brightness. Restraint replaces confidence. In this world, the survivors who live longest are not the ones who carry the most powerful lights. They are the ones who understand the physics of being seen. This is the threshold you must cross before the tools matter. Without this principle, no equipment, no matter how advanced, rugged, or improvised, will compensate for tactical negligence. With it, even the simplest lighting tool becomes a life-preserving instrument. The next parts dissect these 6 tools that obey this doctrine and why they remain the final unshakable options in total post-apocalypse darkness. The first lighting tool that survives every collapse scenario is the dynamo hand crank flashlight, the only light source that never waits for sunshine, never depends on batteries, and never dies unless you do. You introduce it immediately because survivors must know exactly what they're reaching for when the world goes dark. A compact, gear-driven flashlight powered entirely by your own motion. Its reliability is not a feature. It is a weaponized form of certainty built on the hard logic principle that mechanical systems outlive electrical hope. A dynamo flashlight works on brutally simple physics. You rotate the crank, the internal gear train turns a magnet through a coil, and your muscle becomes stored electromagnetic energy. In a world where lithium cells rupture in the cold, alkaline batteries leak into their casings, and solar panels die beneath ash skies, the dynamo stands as the only lighting tool whose lifespan is chained directly to your will. This immediacy is what makes it essential. You don't wait for light, you generate it. But owning one after the collapse isn't guaranteed. So the question becomes, how do you get it when the world has already fallen apart? The first source is abandoned emergency kits, roadside, governmental, industrial. Because many pre-collapse safety protocols included crank flashlights as a fallback for power failures. Search emergency stairwells, old maintenance closets, disaster preparedness stations, and vehicle emergency compartments. The second source is improvised markets forming after collapse. Dynamo lights become early currency items because they are rare objects that provide guaranteed value. The third option is salvage. These lights often survive debris impact because their casings are reinforced plastic shells with low internal complexity. Even a partially crushed unit may still function after cleaning corrosion and re-lubricating the crank spindle. Yet the dynamo's advantages come with tactical cost. You must earn every second of illumination. 30 seconds of cranking may give 1 to 2 minutes of functional light, enough to check bearings on a map, inspect a wound, or navigate a narrow passage. This exchange rate disciplines you. It forces you to respect illumination as a finite resource. It breaks the old world luxury of constant light, and more importantly, it teaches you the rhythm of survival. Crank and cover, pause, illuminate, move. You create photon bursts, controlled, deliberate, strategic, not beams lingering long enough to betray your silhouette. The sound is your second enemy. Cranking is not silent. The ratcheting click echoes through metallic corridors, collapsed tunnels, and hollow structures. So you crank only when the environment can swallow the noise, during wind gusts, distant collapses, or the rumble of shifting debris. The dynamo teaches acoustic discipline in the same way it teaches photon discipline. You learn to listen before you light, and to predict what might be listening to you. But its greatest value lies in psychological stabilization. Under fear, uncertainty warps the mind. Darkness amplifies panic. The repetitive motion of the crank imposes mechanical rhythm, breath, turn, illuminate, and this becomes a neurological anchor. You're not just generating light, you're restoring control. You reclaim tempo in an environment built to strip tempo away. Hard logic recognizes this. Survival is mental before it becomes physical. And the final truth is the simplest. While every other lighting tool will eventually fail, batteries drained, fuel evaporated, solar cells cracked, the dynamo flashlight endures because its core principle is immune to collapse. It needs no infrastructure. It needs no conditions. It only needs you. This is why the dynamo hand crank flashlight is always the first tool and often the last one still working. The second lighting tool that survives the collapse is the long-burn chemical light stick, the cold glow tube that people once dismissed as disposable party gear, but in the aftermath of civilization becomes one of the most strategically reliable illumination systems ever created. You stated immediately because clarity matters. It is the only light source that works even when the world becomes electrically dead, magnetically unstable, water-soaked, dust-choked, or structurally poisoned. It operates on chemistry, not infrastructure, and chemistry doesn't care that civilization fell. Most survivors underestimate glow sticks because they expect brightness, not survival logic. But brightness was a luxury of the old world. Hard logic shatters that mindset. In the post-collapse environment, the safest light is the one that refuses to reveal your position. A glow stick emits a soft, diffuse, non-directional glow. It does not cast a beam that exposes your silhouette. It doesn't flicker in a pattern that tracks your movement. It bleeds light into the environment instead of carving through it. And that diffused glow is its greatest weapon. It lets you see without letting others see you. Understanding how it works gives you the respect it deserves. Chemiluminescence is brutally simple. When you bend the tube, the internal glass vial snaps. Two chemicals mix, and the reaction releases photons with zero heat. Zero heat means zero infrared signature, which is critical when hostile groups track thermal contrast or when predators rely on body heat silhouettes. Zero spark means no accidental ignition in methane pockets, industrial ruins, or dust-heavy chambers where one flame could collapse a building. Zero electronics means no EMP vulnerability, no corrosion failures, and no switching mechanisms that jam under moisture or rust. A glow stick works underwater, in acidic rain, inside contaminated structures, or after being thrown from height. Physics does not care about fear. Chemistry does not care about ruin. But knowing how to get them is just as important as knowing why they matter. After the collapse, glow sticks aren't lying around in homes. They're concentrated in very specific environments. Pre-collapse emergency caches, search hospitals, underground parking structures, industrial facilities, fire safety stations, roadside emergency boxes, and maintenance tunnels. Glow sticks were standard equipment in disaster kits because they were stable, cheap, and impossible to misuse. They also appear in military depots and abandoned security checkpoints, any place that once needed dependable low-signature light. Even old sporting goods stores, camping aisles, or maritime facilities stock them in bulk, airtight containers. Glow sticks stored in sealed packaging can last over a decade with only gradual degradation, which means even in late-stage collapse, you can still find viable units. Their weakness is duration. Once activated, the clock begins. But that weakness becomes strategic when used properly. Glow sticks aren't for constant illumination. They're for marking, anchoring, stabilizing, and controlling the psychological environment. In a collapsed building, drop one down a stairwell to assess depth and movement. In a shelter, hang a single stick at chest height to calm group paranoia without revealing silhouettes. In a tunnel, place them at directional nodes to prevent circular navigation loops, one of the most common collapse-era hazards. The most important principle is the cold glow doctrine. Green and blue sticks project minimal attention signatures while maximizing night vision compatibility. Red sticks preserve your rods, allowing faster adaptation when light dies. Yellow provides the best emergency visibility, but also the highest risk of detection. Choosing the wrong color in the wrong moment becomes a tactical betrayal. Glow sticks will never impress you. They will never blind enemies. But in a world where attention equals death, the tool that glows quietly is often the one that ensures you see the morning. The third tool that endures when modern systems collapse is the oil-based flame system. Not the romantic lantern of old stories, but the brutally functional flame driven by whatever combustible liquid the wasteland will still surrender to you. You identify it immediately because survivors must understand exactly what it is. An oil lamp, tin lantern, wick burner, or improvised fuel flame built from metal scraps, cloth wicks, and any burnable oil that hasn't polymerized into sludge. It is primitive, yes, but primitive is precisely why it survives. Anything that existed before electricity will outlive the death of electricity. The physics are simple but unforgiving. A flame produced by oil is a heat-driven reaction, and heat-based systems operate independently of circuitry, batteries, or magnetic environment. Hard logic values this because a tool that predates the grid cannot die with the grid. Oil burns in cold, burns in wind shelters, burns in abandoned basements, and burns after years of storage, if you understand how to manage it. The flame is not merely illumination, it is heat, morale, signaling, deterrence, and in some moments a psychological anchor against the suffocating darkness that compresses human judgment. Understanding the risks is the first layer of survival. Flame creates heat signatures visible to predators that hunt thermal contrast. Smoke reveals presence if you burn contaminated oil. Carbon monoxide accumulates in sealed rooms and kills silently. Hard logic does not romanticize flame. It treats it as a creature, powerful, useful, and instantly lethal if handled without discipline. An oil flame is predictable only in the hands of someone who respects fluid dynamics, wick physics, and airflow management. Increase the wick height, and you increase flame intensity, but also soot output and fuel consumption. Raise the airflow, and you brighten the flame but risk flare-ups. This is not a casual tool, it is a controlled burn that requires active command. Yet the oil flame remains indispensable because you can always obtain it, even deep into late-stage collapse. Pre-collapse stockpiles are everywhere. Automotive oil, lamp oil, kerosene, diesel, cooking oil, machine lubricant, even rendered animal fat. They all burn if wicked correctly. You salvage oil lamps from abandoned rural homes, pre-electric shelters, marine vessels, old workshops, antique stores, off-grid cabins, and survivalist caches. And when none of these remain, you build your own. You take a metal can, pierce a hole, weave a cotton strip through as a wick, fill the base with oil, and regulate the flame height manually. This is why improvised oil lamps are among the first light sources rediscovered in every real-world collapse scenario, because the ingredients are everywhere, and the knowledge to use them cannot be erased by EMP shockwaves or infrastructure death. Oil-based flame systems offer what electronic devices cannot: duration. A small ration of oil burns for hours. A larger reservoir burns through the night. The flame becomes a long-term anchor that outlasts every battery. But duration does not mean safety. Flame betrays you in open spaces. It telegraphs your presence across valleys. It blinds you in enclosed rooms by illuminating your silhouette against reflective surfaces. It seduces you into feeling secure, even as it paints a bright target on your position. Hard logic warns, the same flame that protects you from the dark also reveals you to whatever lives in the dark. Yet the psychological benefit cannot be ignored. Humans evolved around fire. It regulates fear responses and stabilizes group cohesion in ways no cold artificial light can match. In shelters filled with uncertainty, a controlled oil flame becomes a center of gravity for morale. It reduces panic cycles, anchors attention, and restores a sense of chronological rhythm. Light means time is moving, not collapsing. Oil-based systems are not elegant, they are not safe, they are not modern. But when the world is reduced to ash, rust, and silence, the flame that burns slow and steady becomes a declaration. You are still here. The fourth tool that endures the collapse is the tactical beam control headlamp, the only modern light source that still earns its place in a world without guarantees. You must state it immediately because precision matters. This is not a camping headlamp, not a cheap plastic torch. It is a hardened, directional, beam-adjustable illumination device designed to free your hands, sharpen your awareness, and give you control of your environment while you move. In post-collapse darkness, being able to use both hands is not convenience, it is survival math. Climbing, lifting, defending, mapping, navigating rubble, all demand mobility that a handheld light cannot provide. But the real value of a tactical headlamp lies in the principle it honors. Light must follow intention, not emotion. Hard logic states that illumination must be controlled, directional, and surgically applied because reckless beams reveal position and movement patterns to hostile observers. A headlamp obeys this rule through beam control. Tight, narrow beams for stealth navigation, wide, diffused beams for close work, low red modes for night vision preservation, and strobe modes for emergency disorientation. It lets you decide how much the dark sees and from what angle. Understanding the science behind its survival potential makes its value clearer. Battery chemistry is the deciding factor. Alkaline cells fail under cold and leak under humidity. Nickel-based rechargeables lose capacity after cycles, but lithium cells, especially lithium primary or lithium-ion packs, retain charge for years, resist temperature extremes, and produce stable voltage under heavy draw. This is why tactical headlamps using lithium power outperform every casual flashlight after the collapse. Light becomes predictable, consistent, and long-lasting, even when the environment crushes less stable energy storage. But the question survivors always ask is the most important one. How do you get one when the world has already died? Tactical headlamps are concentrated in 3 types of locations. First, search professional gear zones. Industrial maintenance sites, construction zones, underground utility access rooms, mining outfits, fire and rescue depots. These are built for people who needed hands-free light long before collapse. Second, high-end camping and outfitter stores contain beam control headlamps sealed in weatherproof packaging, often with spare batteries stored separately in dry boxes. Third, search abandoned security forces, ranger stations, and paramilitary depots. Tactical headlamps were standard because they maintained reliability under environmental stress. Once acquired, the headlamp becomes an extension of your situational logic. Beam control is not optional. It is the essence of survival. A narrow beam minimizes exposure by limiting lateral spill. Aim it downward rather than outward, lighting your steps but hiding your eyes. A lower angle conceals your approach while still revealing hazards. Red mode becomes critical in ambush zones because it preserves rod sensitivity in the retina, allowing faster transitions back into darkness without temporary blindness. This tool also sharpens psychological stability. In collapse environments, uncertainty destroys decision-making. A headlamp stabilizes cognitive performance because it eliminates the micro delays caused by fumbling with handheld light sources. Your reaction time tightens. Your awareness expands. And because the beam tracks your gaze, it reconstructs your sense of control in a world that tries to strip it away. The greatest advantage, though, comes from movement freedom. With a headlamp, you climb rubble without misjudging footholds. You search collapsed rooms with both hands ready. You can defend yourself while still illuminating the threat. And in environments where every second matters, the ability to move without juggling a light becomes the difference between clearing a hazard and triggering it. A tactical beam control headlamp is not the brightest tool. It is not the longest lasting, but it is the only one that moves at the speed of your decisions. And in the ruins of the world, speed is life. The fifth lighting tool that remains valuable long after the world systems die is the solar rechargeable micro-lantern, a compact, low-draw, high-efficiency diffusion light designed not for travel, but for holding ground. You identify it up front because survivors often misunderstand its role. This is not a searchlight, not a tactical beam, not a directional marker. It is a zone stabilizer, a lantern that turns a hostile, disorienting shelter into a controlled environment where decisions can be made without panic and where a group can remain cohesive instead of fracturing into fear. Its survival logic rests on a single principle. Every shelter needs a center of gravity. Hard logic teaches that chaos amplifies in darkness, especially in groups. Without a stable point of illumination, paranoia spreads, arguments escalate, and judgment spirals into error. A micro-lantern solves this because its soft 360-degree glow stabilizes the psychological environment without projecting your presence into the distance. Unlike bright LEDs or flame-based tools, a micro-lantern diffuses light locally. It creates a perimeter of clarity no larger than a small room, just enough to keep your team oriented, no more than necessary to stay unseen from the outside world. Its strength lies in its energy independence. Solar rechargeable systems remain functional long after infrastructure collapses because they rely on the one resource the world still provides: ambient light. Even under ash-filled skies or through degraded atmospheric haze, photovoltaic cells can still gather fractional energy over time. These lanterns store that energy in high-density internal batteries, drip charging throughout the day, enabling illumination at night. They do not need pristine sunlight, they only require patience. And patience, in collapse scenarios, is currency. Knowing how to find them becomes the next strategic step. Micro-lanterns are often located in pre-collapse camping stores, off-grid survivalist cabins, Coast Guard stations, rooftop emergency caches, and any location designed for extended stays without guaranteed power. Urban explorers find them in abandoned apartments belonging to preppers, rooftop gardens, or minimalist eco-homes where solar kits were common. Marine environments, marinas, small boats, life rafts, also stock compact solar lanterns sealed against moisture. They were built for prolonged isolation long before isolation became the permanent condition of the world. Their limitations, however, are non-negotiable. Solar lanterns require time and exposure to gather energy. In continuous overcast or subterranean environments, they may charge slowly, forcing survivors to ration usage or alternate between multiple units. Their diffusion glow, though safe, is not tactical. It cannot cut through distance, cannot probe darkness, cannot serve as a search tool. Hard logic reminds you, a lantern is for territory, not transit. You stabilize with it, you do not advance with it. But their psychological power is unmatched. A diffused glow reduces panic propagation in groups. It keeps breathing synchronized, keeps decision-making rational, suppresses hallucinations brought on by prolonged darkness, and provides a visual anchor that prevents individuals from drifting into dissociation. Light is not just photons, it is neurological order. When placed at the center of a room, a microlantern becomes a quiet commander, imposing calm without needing force. Its value multiplies in long-term collapse scenarios because it creates light cycles, something human biology depends on. Without the rhythm of day and night, circadian regulation fails, sleep collapses, cognitive function decays. A microlantern used in controlled intervals restores a sense of time, prevents psychological erosion, and keeps a group mentally intact. A solar rechargeable microlantern will never overwhelm darkness. It doesn't need to. It creates a sanctuary inside the dark, a controlled bubble of reality where survival decisions can be made with clarity instead of fear. The sixth and final lighting tool that remains lethal, reliable, and brutally adaptable in a dead world is the multi-fuel improvised torch, the weaponized flame you build with your own hands when every manufactured system has failed. You name it immediately because clarity is survival. This is the torch made from scavenged cloth, metal piping, wooden shafts, wire wrap, and whatever combustible fuel the wasteland still yields. It is the oldest light humans ever created, and it endures because it follows the hard logic doctrine that a tool you can build is a tool that cannot be taken from you. An improvised torch is not a decorative flame. It is a mobile illumination weapon designed for hostile terrain. Collapsed industrial corridors, underground transit tunnels, forest dead zones, flooded shafts, and structures where directional beams fail. The flame announces presence, but it also dominates the immediate environment. Heat pushes back animals. Smoke reveals airflow anomalies. Flame reflections expose movement, and the burning tip becomes both signal and deterrent. You carry a torch not to hide, but to force the environment to answer you. Understanding the physics is mandatory. A torch operates on capillary action. The wick absorbs fuel, the flame consumes it, and the burn rate is determined by wick density, fuel volatility, and airflow. Fast-burning fuels like gasoline produce flare-ups and blowouts, dangerous, unstable, deadly in confined spaces. Thick oils, motor oil, plant oil, animal fat, produce slower flames but heavy soot. Kerosene or mixed oils strike the best balance between brightness, stability, and burn duration. Hard logic recognizes this. Control the fuel, control the burn. Control the burn, control the risk. The critical advantage of the multi-fuel torch is availability. You can build it anywhere. You salvage metal tubes from collapsed buildings, wooden handles from debris, cloth from abandoned clothing, and fuel from vehicles, kitchens, workshops, or even organic rendering. You can twist wire or wrap cloth to bind the wick. You can soak the head in oil, fat, or alcohol. In extreme scarcity, even plastic residues can be melted and layered to prolong burn. No scarcity prevents this tool from existing. Only ignorance does. And ignorance is the first thing collapse punishes. A torch's weaknesses are real and merciless. It destroys stealth. The flame flicker reveals movement. The heat signature is visible from distance. Smoke can suffocate in enclosed rooms. Sparks can ignite dust or gas pockets, but these weaknesses become advantages when strategically deployed. In dark ruins where predators stalk silently, a torch becomes a perimeter weapon. In tunnels where poisonous gases gather, the flame reveals instability before your lungs pay the cost. In structures full of stagnant air, the smoke exposes drafts that indicate hidden exits or structural voids. Darkness becomes readable through combustion. Fire turns the unknown into information. Psychologically, the improvised torch serves as a declaration. A survivor carrying a torch signals intent, not passive movement, not hesitation, but control of space. Flame manipulates the human primitive brain. It commands distance, asserts dominance, and stabilizes group fear in ways no cold light can replicate. The rhythmic sway of a torch restores primal orientation. In collapse psychology, this matters. Flame synchronizes heartbeat, reduces panic propagation, and anchors attention around a moving point of certainty. This tool does not pretend to be safe. It is volatile, loud, and visible. But collapse is not a world where safety exists, only advantage. And in the deepest darkness, the ability to manufacture your own illumination, your own weapon, and your own environmental probe becomes the highest form of operational independence. A multi-fuel improvised torch is not subtle. It is not quiet. It is not modern. But it is the one light that obeys no supply chain, no infrastructure, no scarcity, only your will to build it. When the lights of the old world vanish and the darkness stops being a backdrop and becomes an active force, survival reduces itself into a single discipline: the lighting protocol. Not a list of tips, not improvisational guesswork. A doctrine built on hard logic, physics, biology, psychology, and collapse behavior that governs how illumination is used when every photon becomes a tactical decision. Every mistake is irreversible because light is both lifeline and liability. You obey the protocol, or you disappear into the dark the way countless survivors already have. The first principle is photon discipline. Light is not visibility, it is exposure. Every second, a beam cuts the dark. Your position, posture, and movement rhythm become legible data to anything watching. You never saturate the environment with brightness. You carve into it gently. You angle beams low to hide your eyes. You pulse instead of sweep. You illuminate only what you must know, never what you hope to see. Survivors who blast a full beam into the abyss are not searching. They are announcing. And in a world where attention is fatal, that announcement is a death sentence. The second principle is rotation and rationing. No lighting tool lasts forever, not even the ones built to endure collapse. Dynamo fatigue, fuel scarcity, battery degradation, and chemical expiration all converge into the same truth. You must rotate tools, never relying on a single source. Use glow sticks for shelter stabilizing. Reserve headlamps for movement. Preserve oil flames for stationary tasks. Deploy torches only when confrontation or exploration demands dominance. The survivor who clings to one tool dies with it. The survivor who cycles tools extends the horizon of their existence. The third principle is environmental matching. Every environment dictates its light. Tunnels demand torches for airflow reading. Ruins demand narrow beams for silhouette control. Shelters require diffused glow to maintain group cohesion without telegraphing presence. Open spaces punish flame and reward discipline. Enclosed spaces punish beams and reward chemistry. Hard logic states, darkness is not a single enemy. It's a shifting battlefield, and your lighting strategy must shift with it. The fourth principle is psychological regulation. Darkness erodes cognition. Humans misjudge distance, amplify threats, and enter panic spirals when the world becomes lightless. Controlled illumination interrupts this decay. A micro-lantern stabilizes groups. A glow stick softens panic without revealing position. A dynamo crank becomes a breathing rhythm that cuts through fear. Illumination is not just a tool. It is a neurological treatment that prevents collapse of judgment. Survivors who lose psychological footing lose everything. The final principle is the one the old world never taught. Light is not safety. Light is power, and power mishandled demands a cost. In the post-collapse world, you are always negotiating with darkness, never defeating it, never escaping it, only managing its reach. Those who try to overpower it with reckless brightness die. Those who fear it and refuse illumination die. Survival belongs to the ones who treat darkness as a field of variables and light as the scalpel that manipulates them. This is the truth you carry forward. In the dead world, you don't use light to escape the dark. You use light to control it. Precisely, deliberately, without mercy. And when you master that discipline, the darkness stops hunting you. It waits, because you have become something it cannot predict.